Right. Thanks everyone for being here, and thanks Sasha for the music. I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you. Again, welcome. I'm Reverend Sophia DeWitt, Program Director with EBHO and part of the Faith and Justice Committee at EBHO. And I want to welcome you this afternoon to this Affordable Housing Month event sponsored by the Faith and Justice Committee, Transforming Grief at Housing Injustice, a Faith-Based Response. And we are so glad that you're here. This event connects the teachings of our various spiritual traditions to housing justice. And it's a housing Sabbath event. Housing Sabbath has been an offering of the Faith and Justice Committee for at least 10 years. In earlier versions and before COVID, it involved members of EBHO staff and board visiting various faith communities around the East Bay to talk about EBHO's work in housing justice and to invite faith community representatives to participate in Affordable Housing Month and learn more about how they could advocate for affordable housing and bring greater justice and equity to housing in the East Bay. So we're very happy that you are here today joining us for this event. And so this afternoon, we will be, in terms of an agenda and the quick outline of the agenda, we're going to have some presentations from our panelists, who I will introduce in a moment, questions from me as moderator, as well as questions from you as members of the audience and guests. Ronnie will help us by collecting questions that you put in the chat throughout the event. As well, if you're on the phone, if there's anyone here on the phone with us, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions as well using the Q&A function, and you can come off of mute to ask questions at the end. This event is being closed captioned. So if you need that resource, I believe you can find it at the top of the screen and access that. And this event is also being recorded so that it can be viewed later by other members of EBHO or interested community members who aren't able to be with us today. So with that, I want to start off our program by turning it over to Faith and Justice member David Angelillo, who will be giving our land acknowledgement.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, the East Bay, the place where most of us live, work, and fight to make sure everyone has a home, is unceded Lisjan territory of the Lisjan Ohlone people, and the original homeland of the Ohlone, Bay Miwok, and Delta Yokut communities. This historical and ongoing reality matters for all of our work. Homes, the land they rest on, and colonization are deeply entwined. The injustices in our housing system, including housing insecurity, displacement, and homelessness reside on top of a foundation of colonization. And indigenous people in the Bay have been resisting this for centuries. To truly advance housing justice, our movement and our organizations must strive to support indigenous-led efforts to repair the ongoing harms of colonialism here in the East Bay. In that spirit, EBHO is in the process of paying Shumi, a Chochenyo word meaning gift, a voluntary land tax that supports the work of the Sogorote Land Trust, which returns Ohlone land to Ohlone people. And we encourage our members and supporters to learn more about the people whose lands you work on and consider joining us in paying Shumi. Look for the link to support this cause in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And as I said earlier, this event today is part of EBHO's Affordable Housing Month, celebrated each May by housing organizations in the Bay Area. Since 1984, East Bay Housing Organizations, EBHO, has worked with our members to create, preserve, and protect affordable housing opportunities for low-income communities in the East Bay by advocating, organizing, educating, and building coalitions. We celebrate Affordable Housing Month to call attention to the housing affordability crisis, lift up solutions, and celebrate our achievements. By being here, you are joining hundreds of people around Alameda and Contra Costa counties at 20 events this month, including panels, groundbreakings, grand openings, a whole range of events. This is our final event for the month today. We're really happy that you have joined us. Our theme is affordable homes for all, because we believe that communities are healthiest and most powerful when we have quality homes for all, and when those most affected by the housing crisis can shape their own futures. Today, we celebrate and learn, but after this, let's take action together. To learn more about housing resources, policy information, and profiles of residents and properties, visit one of the nooks in our online affordable housing study room. And we'll be talking more about the study room later today as well. And finally, I invite anyone here who is not already to join me as a proud and active EBHO member, so you can help us further our mission to create, preserve, and protect affordable homes for all. So please contact us, Ronnie or myself, or any of the other EBHO staff if you're interested. And we thank you. And now I would like to invite Liza Rankow to offer an opening prayer and reflection for our event today. Liza.
Thank you. Good afternoon, friends. I am honored to share an opening word. Prayer is a movement in consciousness made more powerful as we come together. So I ask that even through this medium of Zoom, we reach our hearts to one another across the distance, that we feel ourselves in a great circle, hands joined in affirmation of our connection. If you're comfortable allowing your eyes to close, I invite you to do so. And if not, simply turn your attention inward. Take a deep, full breath. And a long, slow exhalation. Feel yourself centered in the presence of the divine and in this sacred community. We gather together in what mystic and activist Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel called a sanctuary in time, to reflect on heartbreaking suffering and injustice, and to invoke the sacred alchemy of transformation. We gather from many life ways and traditions, many ancestries and experiences. We gather in our common concern for justice, healing, and the well-being of all. As we reflect on the state of the world and of our communities, let our hearts not merely be broken, but broken open. The way a seed breaks open to allow the growth of stem, leaves, flower, fruit. Let our broken open hearts birth a vision of justice and the courage and conviction to make it manifest. Let our grief be like the breaking of the waters that herald the coming of new life, the birth of new ways of caring for one another and for all being. Let our tears be like the rain that softens the parched earth of our calloused hearts, to make of them a garden of possibility. Let our minds be washed by this sacred water, cleansing the weariness of long struggle, and our souls be refreshed and enlivened. Let us be strengthened by this time of gathering together. I speak a word of blessing for this event, for every speaker, every support person, every participant, everyone involved in this urgent and holy work of housing justice and creating together beloved community. I ask, Divine, that you walk with us and guide us as we hold one another in grieving, in healing, and in hope, that we may inspire and uplift one another in commitment and action. Breathe into us, Holy One, and help us to bring our very best selves to this sacred calling. Strengthen us when we grow weary and refill our cups when they run dry. Keep our hearts always soft and open to you and to one another. Thank you, Divine. In your many holy names we pray. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liza, for that reflection and opening prayer. And now I want to invite Genevieve Wilson, a member of our Faith and Justice Committee and member at the Way Christian Center, to share with us about some research that she's done about different major faith traditions and how they understand and approach grief. Genevieve.
Great. So, yeah, thank you, Liza. That was really beautiful. As I was thinking about this portion of today, I was thinking about how much could be shared about faith traditions' approach to grief. And we have 10 short minutes. And so I was thinking about, what to bring. And the word snapshots kept coming to mind. So I began looking through my pictures. And this one stayed with me. And I want to leave it here as I speak. I don't know what it will bring up for you. I don't want to put that forth for you. But for me, as I thought about today, I thought this is a picture of one of our encampments that is nearby to my home. And it definitely stirs certain things in me, several feelings of which are related to grief. And so I just want to invite you, as you look at that photo and listen to what I have to say, to be present to what it stirs in you as well. I can only imagine that with the growth of many of our encampments, that most of us are living not too far from one, and that this is a familiar image. I've more often than once heard it said that all great religions deal with grief and loss in some significant way. And I personally continue to find that to be true. And so as I thought about today, I thought about the major historical religious blocks: Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. And that's certainly not exhaustive by any stretch, but I chose to focus on those for the sake of time. All of these have their own way of looking at grief and loss and approaching grief and loss. And I would say that all of this is bound up with views on suffering. And they also involve ritual, and they involve community. Hinduism and Buddhism have some really striking similarities, I think, given that they share roots in the Vedas, but they also have some really striking differences in what they believe about the human soul. And as part of that, why rebirth and reincarnation are important as part of transformation. Judaism and Christianity and Islam also have some similarities given their Abrahamic roots and their worship of the same God, especially Judaism and Christianity. But there are also perhaps significant differences on their views about the hereafter and how and why we transform on our way to that hereafter. So for today's purposes, as I thought about the many things that I could share, one of the things that came to mind to highlight was that all of the faiths have a lens on suffering as part of and a contributor to grief and the human experience. And all of them have a lens on transformation, something that is a process and ultimately desirable to achieve in its fullness, and something we can achieve if we stay on the path. So to that end, I wanted to share a couple of quotes that some folks from our committee provided. And I don't believe any of them are with us today, but these are amazing women who had some things to say that I thought they've said it better than I can. And I'd like to lift up these snapshots. So from a friend, Talia, who is Jewish, she had to say, a central and significant custom in Judaism in grief is to grieve in community, not to grieve alone. This is a very meaningful thing because when one's grieving, it's easy to isolate and withdraw. However, Judaism has a built-in structure of support to surround those who are grieving with community care. After burial begins Shiva week of visitors to your home, for example, and a week of communal prayer and remembering. And Jews say that an ancient life-affirming prayer called the Kaddish to remember and honor the loved one who's passed away. The prayer can be said every day for the first 11 months after the death of a family member, and then annually, but it must be said in community. There are 10 adults present to recite this special prayer, and it ensures that someone grieving is surrounded by community and support. And then from Buddhism, Kiki, who is part of EBHO, had this to say. I think it's important to say that my understanding is based on Buddhist practice and experience. I'm approaching grief from a place of suffering, and I practice Nichiren Buddhism, which originates from a 13th century Japanese monk who wanted to rid Japan of its suffering. So he went on a quest to study all of Buddhist teachings and came to believe the Lotus Sutra was the highest teaching of the original Buddha. Our belief is that there are 4 major sufferings: birth, aging, sickness, and death. All of these cause suffering for us, but they're also natural parts of life. When we lose someone or something important, we grieve that loss, and sometimes it becomes a poison in our life. We may find ourselves unable to find joy or hope in our daily life, but through our practice and faith, we can transform the poison of suffering or grief into a medicine of healing. And through this experience of transformation, we create medicine for future instances of grief, and we're able to help others with their own transformation. And then finally, from Islam, this comes from Rabia, who's also a member of Faith and Justice. There's a verse in the Quran that I love. After every difficulty, surely there's relief. Quran 94:5 says, Muslims do not overtly mourn or show grief. It's looked down upon to wail or to scream or to cry. Is this because Muslims have no feelings? No, it's because we're bid to reserve our passions for Allah, not to cling to what can die, but rather to look forward to paradise for ourselves and those who we love. So we believe that a person who dies as a believer has no worries, and we have none for them because, having lived righteously, they're certainly in paradise. So in fact, it seems that Islam sees soothing grief through action as an important part. Give zakat, pray, practice justice, take care of those who have little or nothing. So what I'm wondering now is whether or not that stirred anything as you listened. And if you come from a particular faith tradition, I wondered if you would take a moment to just drop in the chat a word or a phrase or perhaps a sentence about the way that your own faith tradition approaches grief. And I'll read some of them out. No one? I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and we allow space for grief to be flowing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One person says, community and hope from faith from Sophia. Sasha says that gave her a lot to think about. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? I don't want to shut that off too quickly. People have thoughts. Gloria says that she was raised Catholic, which was the tradition of the wake before someone's laid to rest. That wake can be a very somber place or a very raucous one. Yes, that's true. Mm-hmm. Any last thoughts? Okay, Sasha, would you go ahead and change the slide to the next slide? Novenas have been an important part of ritual. Yes. Mother Mary is.
Sorry, did the slide change work?
Yes, it looks great.
Awesome.
Thank you. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So you recall the first picture and have a look at this picture and just take a moment to let that picture register and to register and feel, you know, do you feel differently looking at this photo? How do you feel differently? If you want to put how you feel differently in the chat, that's fine too, if you'd like to share with that. Someone said they feel joy with this picture. It's a strikingly different picture, right? So I want to go back to something someone else put in the chat earlier. Earlier on, Jenny Madsen shared with us that the earlier picture brought up fear, feelings of fear, that one day it would be her home. And that brings up a lot of grief for that being in the future. I can relate to that. I can relate to that. This photo, what else? People have put other things in here. The new picture gives hope, gives Ronnie excitement. Christy, it gives hope and order. Liza says it's inspiring. The colors are so creative. So this picture is from a tiny house village that is part of Youth Spirit Artworks work. And Youth Spirit Artworks is an interfaith art jobs and training program that's located, it's based in Berkeley. This tiny house village is close to Hagenberger here in Oakland. And I believe it's the first of its kind here locally. Mm-hmm. So Sally shares my own faith tradition of Christianity. And she definitely holds a very strong, she's the executive director of this organization. And she helped the group organize together to bring this community to be. And she definitely has a very huge part of her heart devoted to transformation. And when she sees things that bring grief, is very much inclined to leaning into that grief and to thinking, how can we go about transforming this? What can be done? So I wanted to offer this picture. Oh, cool. So it feels like it's the first tiny house village in the country. Derek says 633 Hagenberger Road. That's right. But this is such a wonderful invitation, I think, to the transformation of grief and to what can be possible. It's easy to lose hope, I think, and feel that things are crowding out. But I look at this picture and I look at other photos of this particular work, and it gives me a great deal of hope because it's so full of all the things that you put in the chat. It inspires, it brings excitement, there's hope and order and community, and it's living and breathing and transforming. And so I wanted to leave us with that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Genevieve, especially for that overview and for leaving us with that picture that brings up so many positive feelings of transformation, hope, order, joy, community, excitement, all those things as we consider how we can and how our faiths can help us transform the grief that we feel at housing injustice into something positive that helps us move forward in our lives and in community. So as we move into our time of panel discussion on our topic, just a few words to kind of give context to our conversation. Today's discussion recognizes the large impact that grief and trauma have had over the last number of years and are having today on our communities. This grief and trauma is caused by housing injustice, which includes the large number of people in tents or on our curbsides, the large number living with unsafe or unsanitary conditions in their apartments and homes, the large number of severely rent-burdened individuals, the thousands of families vulnerable to eviction, the many families and individuals displaced from long-term homes and neighborhoods due to gentrification. The COVID pandemic is another source of grief and trauma that is related to all of these and has revealed many of these injustices anew and with greater force. And the COVID pandemic accelerated many of these injustices and inequities. In the midst of this intersection of grief and injustice, our faith traditions can offer resources to help us heal and to continue to move toward justice. And Genevieve began to speak to some of this. That is what we will explore today with the help of people of faith directly impacted by our housing crisis here in the East Bay. So I want to introduce now our panelists for this afternoon. And first, I want to introduce Betty Gabaldon, tenant organizer with East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy, who works every day with individuals who have experienced and are experiencing housing injustice and housing insecurity, and has also faced those experiences in her own life. Betty, we're so happy that you can join us today for this conversation. Also with us, we have Derek Sue, who is currently an unhoused individual, but also a leader in his sanctioned encampment neighborhood, the 77th Rangers neighborhood, and has worked with many organizations to work to ensure that people in his neighborhood and in his community receive the services and supports that they need to live and to thrive. Derek is also candidate for mayor of Oakland this year. And also with us, we've heard from her already, but Genevieve Wilson from our Faith and Justice Committee, who is a resident of West Oakland, has worked with unhoused communities in direct support and in other forms of advocacy for many years, and also is working on building a small business in the West Oakland neighborhood. So I thank all of these individuals for joining us today, and I want to invite folks to start us off by offering some initial remarks about your experience of housing injustice, your experience of grief, the role that your faith has played in your work and your life, some things that you may want to talk about as you initially share with us, and each of you will have 10 minutes in this section. You don't have to take all of that, but if you want to, that's open for you. But some of the things you might want to share with us initially are something about the broader context of housing injustice in the community, how grief at that housing injustice has shown up in the community that you know and that you're a part of. As a person who has experienced housing insecurity, was there ever a time when you relied on your faith or spirituality to help you get through? And if so, what did that look like for you? And then, if we were to address the grief and the needs of unhoused communities, what would that look like? So I want to invite you now to share, and I'll start with Betty. I'll invite Betty first to share. And Betty, if you could share something maybe both from your professional experience and role, as well as your personal experience. That would be wonderful, but we look forward to you sharing with us now.
Thank you, Sophia. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for having me here. I'm Betty Gabaldon. I'm a tenant organizer with EBHO and also president of Todos Santos Tenants Union. I'm a single parent and I'm also a renter. And just like you guys were talking about earlier about how this pandemic has affected many people, and it has been very devastating for those of us who rent. But this housing crisis is not new for renters. We had experienced skyrocketing rents, harassment, and unsafe conditions. I myself went through the trauma and anxiety that an eviction causes. I lived in Concord for 20 years. In 2016, my apartment building switched management companies, and I was given a rent increase of $400. During this whole time, my neighbors did not have reported to management that our homes were infested with rats. We had bed bugs, mold, not working refrigerators. And due to this rent increase and having no repairs done, my neighbors and we decided to organize and fight for habitable living conditions and to stop the rent increase. And after a month of organizing, we won. We started to get the repairs that we needed in our homes. But because in Concord, there's no just cause protections, I was retaliated against for speaking out and organizing with my neighbors. So I was served with a 60-day eviction notice. My daughter suffered the trauma of being uprooted from her home, leaving her school and friends, and also worried about being homeless because I was having a very hard time finding another place. They asked for so many requirements, such as earning like the 3 times the rent, the first and last month, and the deposit. Just to search for another place also requires days of missing work. Moving all of your stuff also requires time and money. Even with me working 2 jobs, that was not enough. And that's why I feel like my own personal experience with landlord harassment, retaliation, and eviction, it gives me a great empathy for tenants and a deep understanding of what they're experiencing that now. The most impacted by this housing crisis are families with children, elderly, the disabled, low-income neighborhoods and community of color, particularly also those undocumented folks who don't speak English, and they are very fearful of speaking out against the unhealthy living conditions and the abuse, the neglect, the exploitation that they're experiencing. Many live in overcrowded, unsafe units with broken appliances, mold, pests that affects their health. I have a story like Mrs. Moore is a senior citizen that lives in fear of speaking up. She lives with a fixed income and cannot afford to go anywhere else. She's been living since 2020 with the leaking roof. 2021, I'm sorry, not 2020. And as of today, the landlord has not fixed this roof. This is a very, this habitability problem has caused her to have panic attacks and depression. Last December, she landed in in the hospital because of this. And just, just like you remember, just a month ago, I think it was like we had rain like for 3-4 days straight, it just kept raining, and the water just kept, just came pouring inside her unit. All of her belongings are in plastic bags and boxes because, of this this problem that she has with the roof. But we also have seen a lot of increasement in harassment. This is what the landlords used to evict tenants from their homes. 80% of these harassment cases had been brought by women of color. Significant percentage of them are single mothers. Many these traumatic behaviors that these tenants are experiencing are threats of violence, threats to call ICE, shutting off their utilities as a form of retaliation, refusing to fix the appliances like stoves and refrigerator, or repeatedly entering apartments without notice. The children are, are frightened by this. Like in the case of Lupe, Lupe is another tenant that I, have worked with, and she was evicted just for asking for her refrigerator to be fixed. And the landlord gave her a 6-day notice. Not only that, but he started harassing her by knocking on her door, threatening to call the sheriff that was going to come and kick them out into the streets. He prohibited her neighbors from talking to her too, when she tried to talk to them to see if this was happening to them as well. Until this day, her young children are so traumatized that when somebody knocks on their door, they run and hide under the bed because they think it's the police that's going to come and take them, kick them out into the streets. The most visible symptoms in Contra Costa County is the lack of affordable housing. The record numbers of unhoused people, it shows on the most recent Contra Costa County, Contra Costa point in time count. It has increased by 35% since 2019. That's a very large increase, more than any other county in the Bay Area. And the best way to prevent homelessness is to keep people safe in their homes. The best way to keep people safe in their homes is also by preventing evictions, I'm sorry. Without protections, just cause protections from preventing landlords from harassing tenants into moving out, I feel like homelessness is going to continue to increase. Attorneys can only write letters, and cops pretty much say this is a civil matter, there's nothing we can do. So because there's nothing like an anti-harassment policy or just cause evictions. I feel like for the community groups to address the emotional needs of the unhoused population and those also experiencing insecurity is to understand what these tenants, people are going through. It's very traumatic to go through an eviction. The feeling of losing your home, being uprooted from your community is very traumatic. And that's something that we need to understand. I think the way to address this grief is to, like I said before, it's being like the trauma that eviction causes and not being able to afford a place. It's very, we have to understand that. And sometimes when I talk to tenants, I do one-on-ones, and they call me when they're going through this whole process that is an eviction. I feel like I'm the support. I think that's something that as a community we can do to help these people, be there to support them, be there to hear them. They call me every day, and then I'm just, I feel like when they call me, they just feel like I'm there to hear them out. I'm there to I know they're going through this trauma, but I feel like just by talking to me, they feel like they have a support, and a listen, ear also. Like it makes it less traumatic. I feel like when I talk to them, when I'm doing one-on-ones on them. Yeah, I feel like the need a safe and decent housing is also a human right, and everybody deserves a home. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Derek, would you like to share from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. First of all, I would like to say I am a Baptist religious person, and I unfortunately typically meet with people on the worst day of their life. They've just lost their home. They're traumatized. They're confused. They're mentally stressed, and they don't know what to do or who to turn to. I myself was in that same position a number of years ago when I I was a millionaire, a multimillionaire in retirement with a home, and then 2008 happened. So what I tell everybody is no matter how safe and secure you believe your housing situation may be, that could suddenly change, as it did with mine. And that morning became the worst day of my life when on the news, I had just gotten up. I'm in my North Carolina home with $3.25 million in the cash in the bank. And then all of a sudden, the news says that my institution just filed for bankruptcy. You talk about panic. That is panic, because now you realize your safe and secure world is no more. It has gone. It has evaporated instantly. And these are the people that I see daily out here on the streets of Oakland. They're traumatized. They're hurt. They're trying to find answers. They're trying to find solutions. But yet that trauma that they just experienced of losing their home is just the start of the constant trauma of living on the street. And that's why we have to create affordable housing that is available for everybody, even if you have zero income. And the programs, as part of my mayoral campaign, addresses those insufficiencies and removes insecurity, and we become a more secure, safe community by adding tiny homes. And we can add those tiny homes at a very efficient cost and at virtually no cost by utilizing partnerships with large businesses to help support and sustain these tiny home models for individuals. And these tiny home models are available to anybody who is housing challenged. And it's a simple qualification. And you have two categories that you can be placed in. One is sanctuary, and these address our immigrant population, are women that could be seeking out abortion services with the Roe versus Wade situation that we're currently facing. Also evictions, a lack of housing opportunities, and these all are incorporated into a new model that I bring. And then on top of that, we have a safety net housing that I plan on utilizing in Oakland's Middle Harbor. And that brings by itself 12,000 safe, secure housing units available at virtually no cost. And you have support services within an elevator ride to deal with a lot of the traumas and the travesties that one has been through. One of the families that I've worked with it's just a travesty all the way around. It was a mother. She had two adult sons. The husband passed away, and that caused them to lose their home here in Oakland. And three people of color were forced to live in a car, a single car, three adults with no resources, no income anymore. And at the harm that the streets can place upon a person. And here, the story is just so sad. And unfortunately, her two sons were both murdered here in Oakland, one in 2020 and her youngest in 2021, right in front of her. They were shot. And so I still deal with that trauma with that mother. That mother is one of my clients that I regularly see, that I console, that I try to give her some psychological stability and some reason to carry on and to go on. And these are the things that people don't talk about, the traumas and the long-lasting, life-changing events that have plagued our folks everywhere. And our leaders, our administrators have done little to nothing. Our police services continued the trauma of what little those folks are able to put together in terms of a shelter or a home are taken away from them, through the street sweeps. And there are so many families that show up because I am one of the centers here in East Oakland that provides emergency tents and supplies, bedding, food, and we are also a community pantry which feeds the East Oakland. We are one of the only ones in East Oakland, and we partner with a lot of resources for those food items so that we can maintain a full refrigerator that operates through solar electricity. And so we feed the majority of East Oakland families that are housed and unhoused, that are food unstable and need resources. And so this is one of the sites that provides that resource of comfort for those folks. And I'll tell you, it's a very difficult job. It's a very difficult job because, again, like I said, you're talking to folks on their very worst day, having their very worst life. And in many cases, you'll see in their eyes the glimmer of hope has died. And it's horribly sad to see an individual that has lost all hope. And you end up seeing them fall into drug addiction, alcoholism, and everything that puts them on an even worse spiral downward path. And until we have housing resources available to everybody, one of my models is a housing first model. So regardless of your situation, if you're unhoused, you will have housing, emergency housing, safety net housing, tiny home housing. It's all affordable. And we have to provide these resources because the cost of living is getting so outrageous. Now we're getting hit with inflation. I myself have seen the impacts of that inflation just with myself and going shopping. And this bites into the rent, the cost of keeping a roof over your head. And so it becomes a very difficult decision. Well, do you keep the roof over your head and the lights on, or do you eat? And most families here in East Oakland can't do both. There are a lot of families that are struggling. I personally meet with a lot of these families that come to this resource. I talk to the children. I talk to the mothers. I listen to their stories. And I'll tell you, it is absolutely heartbreaking at what's going on here. And so my run for the Oakland mayor's office, I'm hoping to make a real impactful change, bringing 26,000 new affordable housing units just to Oakland alone. And that by itself would fulfill our current RENA allotment, which is required housing needs allotment.
That would be a lot of new homes for certain.
That is a lot of new homes.
And as you're speaking, David, Derek, there are so many interlocking challenges that affect this particular area. I want to thank you for speaking from your perspective. And I want to turn it over now to Genevieve. Genevieve, can you share from your perspective what you've seen around these interlocking challenges and maybe also how your faith has played a role in how you've sought to respond to them.
Make sure that I unmute. Yeah, definitely. It's helpful to hear from other people. I think, as I thought about the broader context, I think the thing that keeps coming back to mind in this particular season that we're in has been, to me, what feels like a complete grinding and crunching between the immense growth of street encampments in our area. And particularly, I'm thinking of Oakland because I live in Oakland. But I remember what it was like when I moved into Oakland in 2012, into the building that I'm currently living in, and what encampment life was like then and what it's like now. And it's exploded. I think most of us are aware of that. And then there's the egregious lack of affordable and particularly deeply affordable housing, as a lot of us have noted in the chat. And so as an advocate, I think part of my own point of pain as time has gone on, I found myself in this building as a result of a housing search coming out of the downturn. I moved to the Bay Area in 2008, hit the downturn. I had been unemployed. I was new to the region. Found myself in what I then realized was quite an unhealthy housing situation, to my surprise. Chose to move out, became what's called hidden homeless for what I thought would be maybe a couple of months until I found a new spot. So hidden homeless is, you're couch surfing and I was living on people's back porches, popping a tent, and I thought, how long could it be that I'm in this situation? And I thought, well, surely 3 months, 4 months, I'll find something, right? I'm a resourceful person. And it was 2 years. It was 2 years, and the Occupy movement happened amidst it. And I was moving from couch to couch, from porch to porch, from house sitting gig to house sitting gig, to a hotel, to the YMCA. You get the picture. And eventually found this building, thanks be to God. And I was able to afford the rent here, which is why I came to be here. And I've been here since, and have sort of watched the terrain change. So when I think about the broader context, I think that part of what grieves my heart as an advocate is not only that we haven't built affordable housing stock for a generation, we didn't see the train coming, so to speak. We didn't do the math on the ways that HUD funding was pulled, on the ways that mental health services were completely deconstructed, on the ways that our veterans population has not been well served, on the ways that the baby boomer generation is enormous and is aging and needs different kinds of housing as they age. And so we don't have the housing stock for any of that. And here we are. And there's not, I don't feel, an agreement about how to, not only are we not in agreement about how to tackle the housing shortage, we're also not in agreement about how to work with our street encampments. And so to me, it feels like this total crunch right now as we struggle with both sides of the picture. Yeah, so I've experienced housing insecurity both before I came to be in the building and also since I've been in the building, because I'm a strong advocate for affordable housing. And so similar to what you described, Betty, as I raise my own voice in the SRO where I live, whether it be about habitability issues or longstanding code violations, or more recently, a potential interest in a future purchase through a community land trust, our owner is not happy with me on a regular basis, and she's not happy with anyone who wants to talk with me. And so this past year, she's threatened my tenancy a number of times, to the degree where I've finally have gotten solid legal advice and backing things up and documenting things on a regular basis. And there's a fatigue to that because of the time and energy that it takes. I mean, it really, for the months of, I think, March and April, became almost a full-time job just to make sure that not only I, but the other tenants in the building had what was needful in the event that we needed to protect ourselves. Yeah, so how does my faith inform that? I think on the earlier end, when I was hidden homeless, it felt like I was always on the run. And that felt less threatening because I didn't have a tenancy. So it was like, I'm looking. But people's attitudes towards me, because I wasn't housed, what people thought about my intelligence or my capacity or my competence as an individual was always called into question. And I oftentimes fell back onto my faith because I thought, well, God alone, God knows me. He knows my heart. He knows my intentions, and he knows what I need. So I can rest in that. I can't rest in a whole lot of other things, but I can rest in that. And so similarly, I think this past year, especially with our landlord, I thought, you know, I could be homeless again. It could happen. I don't want it to be happening, but it could happen. And I have to go back in my own faith tradition to the same catch-all, right? Of like, okay, if I believe in this God that I say I believe in, if I believe in this Christ that I say I put faith in, if he wants me to stay here, he'll keep me here. I've got to keep walking this out every day and just do it in faith. I can't fix everything, but I can do what I need to. I can be the person that I need to be for that day. And I can trust in my faith in the process that one way or the other, my needs will be met, whether here or somewhere else, that I'll be held.
Thank you for sharing that so much, Genevieve, and all of you for sharing your experience and perspective. We're beginning to have questions come into the chat, and folks, if you have a question for our panel, please put it in the chat and we'll try to make sure it gets asked. An initial question for you all from Sasha. For those of you, all of you who have experienced housing insecurity in different ways, what is the one thing that if there were one thing, what is the one thing that you wish people who haven't had the experience of housing insecurity would understand about what that experience is, what that experience is like?
I think I'll go first on that one. Going through the housing experience, one of the things that house folks don't realize is once you've lost your housing, it is nearly impossible to get it back. Because once you're on the street or you're living in a shelter, you don't have the income to save up because everything costs you money. A bottle of water, food, keeping yourself clean by trying to find a shower, trying to find a bathroom, everything costs. Because if you use a bathroom at a McDonald's or a fast food restaurant, you got to buy something. Even if it's a small drink, it's still a cost. On the housing, because of the homelessness, the price of tents have doubled. And so they have gotten extremely expensive, and they're in very low supply, typically on the shelves at your normal supply houses. So once you're unhoused and living on the street or living in your vehicle, it is almost impossible to save up the thousands of dollars that are needed to get back into an apartment without a lot of help from city, county, and state. And that's the biggest hold back for me, because even though I have an income, it is a fixed income. It's just not enough income for the current housing market. And so once you've become housing unstable, moving from instable to unstable, you end up like me. I've been out here on the street for 8 years now, and there's no resources and no housing in my price range because I don't have an affordable house, a price range that I can afford for rent, for leasing, or getting back into any kind of home, because every one of my dollars goes to sustaining my life right here on the street. That's the news that people need to realize. Without government intervention and reduction in housing prices and making homes truly affordable, those that are unhoused will always be unhoused and unfortunately die an undignified death here on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek, for sharing that. Betty or Genevieve, would you like to add anything?
I guess for me is a lot of people I hear that they say, well, like if you live in a place that is unhealthy, unsafe conditions, and you have all this like the mold and the rats and stuff, and people always says why don't you move? That question is like, because it's not that easy. Everything costs money, like Derek was saying. It's so expensive to, even when you go apply for an apartment, you have to pay $50 just for the credit report that they said they're going to run. And I don't even think they even do that. They're just scamming for money. Plus, like I said earlier, they ask for the person to make at least 3 times the amount of rent. It's not that easy just to get up and move. Plus, it's my community. I was uprooted from my community. I didn't think it was gonna affect me when I moved. And when I drove with the U-Haul and with all my my furniture, my stuff, I cried. I cried because I was uprooted from that neighborhood that I call home. And until this day, I still go to this place, to the monument in Concord. It's I still go there to shop. I still go there to eat. I mean, I still go back to that, to what my community was before. I feel like I'm at a place where I live right now. I lived there for 20 years, so it's a long time, and people don't understand that it's not just to go and find another place. That's also your home. That's your community. That's what that's where my daughter grew up. She she felt like she was at home, and now and that happened to us. It's very upsetting. It's like I said earlier, it's traumatizing, and it's not that easy to just move. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll pick up on what Betty was sharing, because that brought up very strong feelings for me. Like, yes, I have been told the same thing so many times, Betty. Like, and I by some very close, old, dear friends of mine who, I think knew me. And so in the context of those conversations, when that came up, the context in which it came up was I'd been here in the building not so long, and I'd been here for a few years, right? And it became clear quickly, like, this is a drug building. Like, there's a guy in here on meth, there's a guy in here on crack, there's a guy in here who's a dire alcoholic, we got another guy on heroin, and and we share a kitchen. We share a kitchen, we share bathrooms, and I'm the only woman in the building. So you can imagine what that's like. And people in their own grief, I mean, I recognize it now for what it is. It was grief, right? It's like, I don't want my friend to be having to live with this. Like, we don't want Genevieve to have to be in this. And so they would yell at, like, this one guy was like literally yelling at me, like, move, 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 like, get out of the building, right? And I would just like, if there was an easy way to do that, you bet. And then as time went on, and as the building slowly improved, because it was a slow, lurchy process. I mean, we're just beginning to taste health now. Something else began to take over in me, which I think is the other part of what you're describing, Ginny. Sorry, Betty, I'm looking at the comments as well. Like mapping two things at once, but like, there's something deeper in me that started to take hold because I'm a community-oriented person, and so it's like, no, this is my neighborhood. This is becoming my building, my home. So like for my own faith tradition, like it almost just felt like something would come out of my gut when people would suggest that. And I'd be like, get behind me, Satan, is how it would feel. Shut up. Like, because I've been here long enough and I've seen enough transformation happening that something deeper than just my own ego would come out and would be like hell, if I'm just going to move now. Like, I've fought long enough and hard enough already that I can see what is possible if I just stay in it. And that's not easy. It's very painful. But I think that had to come from the place that you're describing, and that you're describing too, Derek, of like, it's not so simple as just picking your stuff up and walking off. Like, not practically, not financially, not emotionally, not spiritually. It doesn't work that way. And to sort of kind of nutshell it, there's something that we used to talk about quite a bit when I used to volunteer at the Yay Shelter for Youth back when it was in Berkeley on University. It was housed at Lutheran Church of the Cross. And we used to talk all the time about how solutions for housing are what we call relationally bound. Solutions for housing are relationally bound, particularly when someone's out for a long time, like Derek's described, right? It's like, unless someone or someone's helps open that way, a way doesn't produce itself because there are too many obstacles, right? So, I mean, story after story, even the way that I got into this place, because by the time I found this spot, I had been praying specifically for a spot that I could afford at $450 a month at the time. And this was the only place I found in like 2 years of looking, right? And so to illustrate this point, I had not thought about the fact that when I moved up here, my initial lease was a handshake agreement through a church. It was just on faith, right? And so I didn't have anything on paper because prior to living here, I had been in Bangkok, Thailand as a development worker living in a squatter slum. I had no address since like 2000 and the last time I had a legal lease was like, I forget when, like 2004 or something like that, right? So I go off to the field, I come back, I move in with a couple people, I don't have anything real on paper. And I don't think to ask for one. It doesn't occur to me to ask for one. And so I move in, and then I find this place, thank God. And I go into the office, and the woman who's helping me with my lease paperwork says, I think I know you. And I'm like, she does look familiar, right? And so we get into this conversation. She goes, have you ever gone to this one particular church? And I say, yeah, I have friends there and I used to visit. She goes, that's where I met you. So she says, will you tell me how it is that you're in this situation where you don't have lease paperwork? So I tell her, I sit there for like 20 minutes and unload this whole story. And at the end of the story, she goes, that is the most romantic thing I've ever heard, that you would do that in faith for God. She goes, we're going to get you. She's like, we're going to figure this out. I'm totally going to vouch for you, right? So she goes into the back office and she has a conversation and tells the guy that's managing that she knows me. And even though I don't have this history, they close the gap, right? And so it was out of the frying pan into the fire. I moved into a drug building, but I had a roof over my head for the first time in however many, so, and I had it because somebody helped close the gap. That's what it is, that it's relationally bound. It's not about services or programs. It's about relationships. Even if they come through services and programs, it's about relationships. Someone has to help, someone has to support, someone has to close the gap, whether it's financially or administratively, and usually some combination. So that's a snapshot that I wish people would really actively consider and work with. It's real. Knowing people is real.
And if I can be so bold to say, our spiritual traditions, our faith and our spiritual traditions are also based on relationship. Whether it's Buddhism or Islam or Judaism or Christianity, Hinduism. I mean, the relationship may be understood differently, but it's based in relationship. And so that's where I think the role of faith communities can be so important and so critical in helping meet the need of individuals who are experiencing housing insecurity and housing injustice, because it's a way to help fill that gap, or to close that gap that you were speaking about, Genevieve, through relationship. And yeah, relationally bound. Our housing situations are relationally bound. Thank you all very much for sharing. We have a few more minutes for conversation. I'm wondering if there's anyone in attendance this afternoon who hasn't yet had a chance to jump in here, who just has a question or would like to offer a comment. Is there anyone? And if so, please go ahead and raise your hand using the raise hand function, which you can find in reactions at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Everybody's quiet. I see that Jenny, you've added a lot to our chat, and I've been able to follow some of it, but not all of it. As we've been talking here, thank you so much for what you have shared with us this afternoon. Any last comments from anyone as we start to close up?
I'll just say thank you to everyone for sharing and for your answers to my last question. That was really, really insightful and inspiring. This has been like a really, really great conversation.
I have one other thing that I'll say. I was talking about this with some friends who are advocates this week, and we were remembering something another advocate had said at a meeting and how passionate he was about it. And he would frequently remind the Berkeley City Council during the years that we were at the meetings together. He would frequently follow up a comment about something happening in the streets, for example, with, does anyone know that person's name? Does anybody know that person's name? And his point wasn't, can you fix the person's problem immediately? Because we all know there are a lot of obstacles to people moving from A to B. Like even those of us that are housed, like getting from A to B is not quick. It's not a quick fix. But is there relationship? Is the person known? Increasingly. And oftentimes the first step to that is, do I know their name? So I want to encourage that in us, I think. And remind myself of it as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Genevieve. Well, this has been a rich conversation and time of sharing, and I want to thank each one of our panelists, Betty and Genevieve and Derek, for your willingness to share and be vulnerable in that way, and offer us your wisdom. And I want to thank folks for attending as well this afternoon, and being willing to hear and open your heart to the realities that are out there. As we start to close up this afternoon, I want to turn it over to our community faith and justice organizer at EBHO, my colleague Ronnie Boyd, to offer a closing prayer.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. This was truly a blessed event. And I'm happy to give our closing prayer. Many blessings and prayers to all who have participated today and whose leadership we were able to learn and grow from. Let us honor our grief and move through our experiences with patience, kindness, and compassion. No matter what faith movement you follow, there's always room for you in your housing experience. Let us allow the divine into the room with us, and then invite the divine to exist within each of us as we continue on our day and on our journey. Thank you so much again to everyone for being part of this very special event today. I was moved by the experiences that were shared and by the perspectives that everyone holds. Thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sophia.
Thank you, Ronnie. And I just once again want to thank our panelists for sharing your experience and your time with us this afternoon. Betty Gabaldon, tenant organizer with the East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy based in Concord. And Genevieve Wilson from our Faith and Justice Committee, West Oakland resident, and someone working on developing a small business, as well as supporting individuals who are experiencing housing insecurity, and Derek Sue from the 77th Rangers community. Thank you all so much for being with us this afternoon. And it wouldn't be an EBHO event without a call to action. So as I mentioned at the top of our event today, this is our last formal event for Affordable Housing Month. So by way of a call to action, I want to invite folks to visit the study room at EBHO's website and learn more, where you can learn more about the history of racialized housing policy in the United States and housing injustice, where you can learn about ways of responding, such as community organizing, where you can read the stories of individuals who are residents of affordable housing, and read about properties, affordable housing properties developed by many of EBHO's affordable housing developer members. And I also want to thank our sponsors for Affordable Housing Month, and you can see them there on the screen. It is their financial support, along with the financial support of many hundreds of individuals in our East Bay community, and the activism and support and engagement of so many individuals that enables EBHO's work and enables our work to strengthen and grow each year. Before we close up today, I want to invite you to keep in touch with us through our staff email, through our website. I'll also put my personal email into the chat as well. But I also want to turn it over to David Angelillo once again to give us a membership pitch and tell us a little bit about why he's an active member of our Faith and Justice Committee.
Okay, thank you very much, Sophia. Yeah, it's been a very learning experience for me today, being on this call. And if I imagine most of the people here are members, but if you're not currently a member of EBHO, please consider becoming a member and tell your friends and associates. We are stronger and our work is more successful when we do it together. I joined several years ago, encouraged by a friend that is staff at EBHO. Realizing the great need for fair and equitable housing for all people, I wanted to try to make a difference and became an advocate for this great cause. Shortly after I joined, I became a member of the Faith and Justice Committee as a practicing Buddhist. The Faith and Justice Committee is the part of EBHO that connects our work for housing justice to the deepest meanings of our spiritual and faith traditions. It is open to people of all faiths. We advocate on policy, but also seek to support those in housing need directly. And through our various faiths and faith itself, we strive to bring hope to a seemingly hopeless situation. We'd love to have you join our work. I'm sure they're going to put in the chat, if they haven't, email to the EBHO and various people, or contact one of the leaders on the call today. Thank you again, everyone, for today's wonderful event.
Thanks again so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. It was a beautiful, beautiful event. Very profound.
Christy, it's good to see you.
You too, Ronnie.
Thanks so much for